Hi, today we're going to read about Thumbelina. Once upon a time, there lived a good-hearted woman who did not have any children. She yearned to have one and prayed to God every day to bless her. At last, her wish was granted. One day, when she went for a walk in the garden, she found a tiny little baby girl sleeping in a flower. She picked her up and looking at her thumb size in amazement, she immediately named her Thumbelina. She thanked God for hearing her prayers and wondered what she would use to make a bed for little Thumbelina. Just then a walnut fell on her head from a tree above. Emptying the nut, she used the shell to make a little cradle for dear Thumbelina. Thumbelina was a very pretty little girl. She enjoyed walking in the garden even though she could hardly reach up to any of the green grass blades around. She made friends with the beetles, the ants, the grasshopper, and the butterflies in the garden and danced and sang merrily in the bright sunshine outside. One day, as she was playing in the grass, a big ugly frog suddenly jumped in front of her and stopped her from going any further. She was angry and frightened, but the frog was so charmed with her beauty that he decided to marry her off to his son. Even as she cried, the ugly frog caught her in his mouth and took her to a pond near his house. Putting Thumbelina on a water lily leaf, he left to call his son. Poor Thumbelina cried aloud in fear and desperation. Hearing her wailing helplessly, the little fish in the pond felt sorry for her. They quickly nibbled away at the stem of the lily leaf so that it would float far away before the frogs returned. As the lily leaf floated away, one of Thumbelina's butterfly friends spotted her crying and asked Mr. Beetle to save her. Mr. Beetle carried her a safe distance away to his tree. He was very kind and hid her among the thick leaves of the tree. He fed her some honey and looked after her for a few days. But how long could he take care of her? So one day he took her to a field nearby and put her on a beautiful flower. Throughout the summer, Thumbelina lived there happily, drinking honey and dew from the flowers. She made many insect friends and sang and danced with them. But then summer got over. It was autumn. And then came the long, cold winter. The sun was no longer warm. The flowers lost all their petals, and her insect friends went away to live underground. Thumbelina found a beautiful leaf to wrap around herself, but this too dried one day, and she was all by herself, frightened and lonely in the cold winter snow. One day, as she was walking sadly through the cold fields, she met Mr. Mouse. He seemed very friendly, and Thumbelina was delighted when he invited her to his house underground in a deep, long tunnel. He lived there with his dear friend, Mr. Mole. Thumbelina wanted to thank them both for offering her a house and food, and so she cooked for them and kept their house clean every day. One day, as Thumbelina looked out of the window, she saw a poor swallow lying still on the ground. When she went near, she fluttered his wings and Thumbelina knew he was alive. Feeling sorry for him, she brought him home, fed him and nursed him back to health, keeping him all the time in front of the fireplace to remove his numbness due to the bitter cold outside. Once he was strong and well, the swallow thanked Thumbelina and flew away. Mr. Mole loved Thumbelina and wanted to marry her. As Thumbelina had nowhere else to go, she began sewing her wedding gown, but all the time with a heavy, sad heart. She was not at all happy about this wedding and longed to go back to the fresh air, warm sunshine, and the beautiful green garden with colorful flowers and all her friends. One day, before her wedding, Thumbelina stood outside the house and looked sadly into the clear blue sky. To her surprise, she heard the popping of wings. It was her friend the swallow, whom she had one day nursed to health. He asked her the cause of her sadness, and when Thumbelina told him that she longed to go to the beautiful green garden and the warm sunshine, the swallow willingly offered to fly her away on his back. Thumbelina and the swallow finally landed in a far-off field, which was full of beautiful colored flowers, lush green trees with fresh grass, and many tiny insects around. The swallow put Thumbelina on a beautiful white flower and, saying goodbye, flew away. Early in the morning, as the flower opened, Thumbelina's heart leapt up with joy. She saw a handsome prince, same size as herself, with a glittering gold crown and a pair of beautiful fairy wings, standing in front of her. Seeing Thumbelina's beauty, the prince asked her to marry him, and she gladly consented. He gave her a pretty crown and a pair of white wings as her wedding gifts. At last, Thumbelina had found a house among the beautiful flowers, the sunshine, the birds and butterflies, and in the heart of her handsome little prince, who loved and cared for her forever and ever.